Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. She's one of the great actresses and beauties of the silver screen with movies like Shortcuts, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Groundhog Day, and a number of other classics. Now, Andie MacDowell is back in Russell Harbaugh's sensitive and sometimes harsh portrait of a mother and her 2 sons dealing with the loss of her husband and their father. Let's take a look at a clip from the great Love After Love.
What makes you happy?
I just love my kids, you know. Love my boys. What can I say? Your dad's pretty good in bed, too.
Glenn's afraid that his marriage is over.
I'm not laughing. One more time, Dad.
I just lost my dad. My father passed away.
We'll follow up in a day or 2 and see how you're coping and how you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
To marriage, long-lived and fruitful. And to my mother. Hear, hear.
I'm not an idiot! I'm not making it up!
Please! I don't like the way that you are speaking to me. Either of you.
What's going on? You repainting?
Told you that.
No, you didn't.
I run after you like a fool would do. But mama didn't raise no.
We can talk, you know?
I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm having an affair.
It's actually easier now than it was before.
What does that mean?
You're so selfish.
Nick!
Wait, you should have asked. You should have asked. Damn it!
From the beginning, you were in love. You were obsessed. I want to see you happy and fulfilled.
I'll give you love and money, everything to you, no matter what they say, no matter what I do.
What was the question?
I'm gonna love and every girl but you. Because baby, you.
Everybody, please welcome from Love After Love, Russell Harbaugh and Andie MacDowell. Hey there.
Hi there.
Congratulations, you two. I really love this movie. I was telling you in the green room, it's exactly kind of my sensibility in the movies, right in line with the movies that I really love. I'm curious, what made you want to be a part of it, and what did the script look like when you got it? Because one of the things that I truly love about the film, and I was saying this before, is that you feel like you're being tossed in the middle of a scene that's already happening, rather than this scene sort of working from the outside in and telling the audience what it is, which is what most movies do and which is what scripts do a lot of the time. So what did it look like, and how did Russell talk to you about it?
I loved the script. I never had any issues with that concept, or never really registered even watching the movie. It didn't feel that way. I think maybe that's the way my brain works. I don't know, and my life is like that, or I think I was just floored that I was going to be given the opportunity to play a character like this. A woman my age that's that well written, just it doesn't happen. And I love the fact that she's having sex. I just, you know, because nobody does that. I don't know what they think we do, but we do. You know, it is a part of life. And I loved all the intimate details and brokenness and psychological issues that are alive in these characters underneath the story. I mean, there is the overall story of the loss of our anchor, my husband, and the father, which is obviously held everybody together, but there is so much more to the story. There are so many layers, and the characters are really rich.
I completely agree, and there's so much backstory that you can feel that sometimes is brought up in a line or two, or is sometimes not brought up at all, but you can really feel it weighing on this family, or even supporting them at times. Can you talk about developing that backstory and knowing what to keep in, leave out?
Sure. I mean, it's a line that we kind of flirted with in all stages, from development in the script to production to editing, which was this, question of how much can you remove from a story, like how much of a lack of information is a propellant to an audience, and how much of it will make them not want to watch the movie anymore. But your earlier question, which I think Andie answered beautifully when she said it felt like life, I mean, that's really what we kind of rigorously set out to do with the script. The script was, it wasn't a movie where we showed up on set and said, like, let's just shoot whatever. I mean, we played a lot on set, and there's a lot of improvisation in the movie, but it's all on the page. A kind of draft of the scene is on the page always. The kind of essential qualities of each scene. We were establishing boundaries in the script more than we were saying, here's what you have to say. And so those boundaries were written and tested and revised and edited, over a process of many years with my co-writer Eric Mendelsohn. So, and we were after this feeling of a movie that could accumulate scenes in such a way that the kind of movie itself maybe felt accidental, that it felt rough, and that at first you might be disoriented by the kind of whirlwind of it, but eventually it might move you by the very fact that it kind of feels like life.
I think accumulation is the absolute best way to put it. There is something wonderfully disorienting about it initially, but it accumulates a feeling and even a statement at some point about this character and about her family. I'm curious where you got the idea to make it look kind of like an old photograph. Not the poster.
Yeah,
but
the movie doesn't have
itself.
those lines. Yeah, an old photograph. Well. I'm not sure.
Looks like a dusty old photograph. I mean, it's like 16 or Super 16.
It's 16 millimeter. I mean, we had. I guess I would say that we never kind of explicitly talked about making the movie look like an old photograph. We talked about shooting on film and kind of the need for there to be. Film has this kind of organic grain that you can't really duplicate digitally, that there's something, it's like an uncanny valley or something, that when you shoot on film, there's always this kind of surface that's between an audience and the image, and a kind of softness to it, a kind of dreamy quality about it. It feels
I think a
like a memory.
subconscious permanence too sometimes too, where digital feels very slippery, and no matter how well it's done, there's an element of like anybody can kind of capture this somehow.
Yeah, and it feels, I think there is a very subtle emotional difference between the two, but I really feel it. And digital has this kind of pristine, kind of razor sharp, clarity about it that for a movie
And
like
it's
this,
ugly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm waiting for them to make it look more like film, but
it's not
I agree.
I don't know. I think it's ugly.
Yeah.
No, there's no texture,
No, but you see too much sometimes too, and it's not even what it really looks like. It's like it's under a microscope. I don't know. It doesn't really look like life to me. It's too sharp. It's just not. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just not as pretty.
I also think that because we were gonna play so much and improvise so much that I also think that the kind of HD feeling, the kind of clarity of that, the pristine quality of that, I think audiences are so accustomed to seeing these comedies where they just roll 10 hours a day, and then they get to the edit room and they kind of build the jokes together. I had this feeling like improvising with film, which I've seen before, but like guys like Andrew Bujalski and I'm not, it's not like I'm the first to be playful with shooting on film, but being playful while you're shooting on something that feels a little more permanent is like, it does have a kind of a more kind of authoritative kind of.
There's more intention to it.
Yeah.
It seems, at least, it feels like there's more intention to it.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, I think that's true. I don't know. I'm
interrupt.
kind of rambling. It's like hard to discuss why film is kind of more beautiful. It's difficult to put words to, but I think when you watch the movie, you see very quickly that the film is an integral part of it.
When did Andie get involved? When did you think of Andie for the role?
We had Chris O'Dowd cast. This must have been, we shot in November 2015. What was this, the spring or the summer? The
Oh my God, you're asking me to
I don't
remember?
remember. I don't remember. We, you know,
It was a couple of months before we started shooting, I guess. that
Yeah.
I knew. I can't
but
really
but we didn't have money
remember.
yet. I mean, you got the movie financed. It was
Well,
like
that's wonderful news.
yeah.
I like that. That's great news.
But so
But tell the story about seeing the interview. I like that.
yeah, so the story that we would when I would go through casting, with everyone, I would look at kind of behind the scenes interviews and things like this, because I like looking at actors. And things like this because you get a sense of their kind of natural state of performance or like how they think of themselves as being themselves in front of a camera. And I love that more than because you watch a movie or TV show and you kind of don't know who's doing what.
Much of that is being cobbled together by the editors or the director
Yeah.
or the scenario. Yeah.
And
What's the character?
Yeah, what the character.
What's this person really like? Yeah.
And like
You're gonna be able to work
what are
with
people
them, yeah.
saying? Like what are the notes being given to people? You just don't know. And so anyway, I watched these behind the scenes of Andie on Cedar Cove, and I think just very immediately had a very just warm reaction to her. She's such a natural, kind of easy, tender, silky presence in front of a camera.
See why I asked for this story?
Easy, tender, silky presence.
Yeah.
That's good.
Which was interesting to us because the character wasn't those things. That she could be stern and severe and kind of all twisted up, and that the kind of contradiction of that was very interesting. Just very compelling to me.
The contradiction of that makes anytime she's stern or severe or maybe overly one of those two things, you empathize with her rather than go, oh, she's being too harsh right now. I think that juxtaposition of who she naturally is versus who
And
the
it
character
probably
might
kept
be.
me from going too far in one direction.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and added more layers.
Sure. And there was, because we had, and by the way, the same is true for Chris O'Dowd. His character is deplorable.
He's a real shit.
He's a real shit. Yeah, I was like, can you cuss on this?
Yeah.
But his behavior's mostly misdirected and bad. But Chris as a presence is so warm and lovable that I thought that was also complicated. But because he was cast already, I would always test the actors against a given scene in the movie. And for Andie and Chris, it was always the first scene, which is this conversation about relationships and happiness. But more than what they're saying, that scene really needed to be this introduction to a relationship that felt like it existed kind of under the covers together, like that it had a intimacy that bordered on the romantic, that it was all, kind of tangled up. And so, with Andie, it was also imagining her with Chris O'Dowd, and that to me, I just knew that like the two of them together had whatever that thing was. That he's this big. He's huge. He's like 6'4". He's a big guy. He was just coming off of Mice and Men, and so imagining them together, it just felt, I don't know, it felt great to me.
Andie, I think because of like Four Weddings and a Funeral and maybe Groundhog Day, people assume or think about your career as like kind of a lot about romantic comedies, but when you look at your IMDb, one of your first movies is Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Shortcuts. You always took these big chances on sort of great filmmakers. Sex, Lies was Soderbergh's first movie, right? Do you still feel that way? Are you still looking for material like Love After Love all the time in terms of like experiments or daring material?
There's not material out there like this for women my age. There just isn't. It was such a gift that I got this. Plus, you have to think of how many women there are my age that are going to fight for that one piece of material. But we are very underwritten in general in Hollywood and underused, mature women. So this was the best thing that's happened to me in a very, very long time. And I did some other dramatic roles that I'm proud of. But yes, I did do a lot of romantic comedies, and I did really well. I made a lot of money doing them, so I ended up.
They're also great romantic
There's some
comedies
great ones
too. Yeah, don't get me wrong there.
Yeah, and I like them, and I like comedy. I'm getting ready to do just a full-on comic piece, but I did a movie called Unstrung Heroes that didn't get that much attention that Diane Keaton directed. Did you ever see that movie? No. It's a beautiful movie, but if I say so myself.
I'm curious, what kind of material do you normally find that you get? What kind of characters do you normally find?
I don't get enough. That's what I get. I get crickets, but I'm still working, and I'm getting some stuff. I did this year. I've had some comedies. I'm getting ready to go to England and do Cuckoo, which is a half-hour comedy, and
If this week is any indication, Andie's going to have a very big year, and this isn't going to.
I hope so. I would like to play more characters, more demanding roles like this. I would love to see sexier roles for women my age, because I think that we are sexy. I think my character proves that. It's a different kind of sexy than you see with young people, but it's still fascinating, I think, and compelling and touching and interesting, and there's so much that could be done with mature women that is not happening.
Yeah, the opening of the film, and I dare to say this because it is a mother and her son, is extremely sexy. So the way that you're sitting in the window and the look on your face.
I think our relationship was like that. And I say to him, your father's great in bed. It's just a weird thing to say to your son. Yeah. But that is what's interesting about their relationship. Their relationship has just terrible boundaries, horrible emotional boundaries. And I don't think it's that unusual. I think it happens in life that you have to think about the boundaries that you have with your children, and particularly with messing with their relationships, because I find that's easy to do as a parent. You can start giving your opinion when you really don't need to give your opinion.
I'm curious, what did you think when you finally saw the film? Because it's one thing to be a part of a good movie or any kind of a mediocre movie or anything, but it's another thing to see a film that captures a side of you, I think, and maybe even an essence in you versus anything else. And there is something about this film that feels like it captures something about you that may have been intentional on your part or may have been even outside of your own intentions. Does that make sense?
I haven't had an opportunity to show everything that I carry inside of me as a human. And I saw it when I read it. I knew that I had a lot to offer to this character. And I just hadn't had an opportunity to do it. People don't, in general, write complex roles for women. I mean, I also was having another conversation with someone. I don't really have a man, okay? I have a man in the beginning with my husband, but already she's not really that kind of woman in the beginning. Mm-hmm. She's not even going to go on the trip with him. You know what I mean? She's a different kind of woman. Mm-hmm. And I think so many women are there to make the man look good. In general, that's kind of how we're written. And she's not written like that at all. She's a seriously independent woman. And even when she sleeps with these men, it's almost like what a guy would do. It's like what you would expect a man to, do right away. Well, the woman would probably just suffer and, try to have her friends put her together and cry. And I don't know. I mean, but I think the reality is we're really more like that. People just don't realize it.
I agree.
One of the things that I love about the film is that you don't. I feel like you don't realize that it is about this period of time where these characters are going to kind of grow and change until the final moments, where you feel like, oh, not everything is better for them, but this is over for them. They're kind of moving on now, and they're back to a sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. And you sort of don't realize that is the trajectory of the story until the final moments.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think that the end of the film feels like they've found a kind of new stability or a kind of new order that and in some ways I think that's the kind of truth of the experience, is that it's like a table that gets a leg knocked out and it's wobbling until you find a way to kind of right itself again. I think in my own well, actually, go ahead.
I was just saying it's a different kind of film that doesn't. And this goes back to the first thing that we were talking about. It's a different kind of film that doesn't tell the audience what your film is looking for and then gives it to them at the end. Yeah. It waits till the end to show the audience what everybody's been looking for in the film to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the film itself kind of feels like this experience, that it's like that. I think something that was really true about mine was that after I lost my father, there was, the remaining members of the family, I think all expected to kind of do whatever grief is together, or at least separate but in the same way. And I think that of course that can't be true. Of course there are kind of independent ways of grieving even within a family. And I think in my case, I think we all kind of, in a very subtle way, but kind of resented each other for not doing it the way that we were doing it. And so you try and kind of, I think in my family, we tried to kind of find other ways to kind of connect. And so when my mom started dating again, that's when I started to write this movie, and I asked her if I could interview her. And so, the kind of intimacy or that kind of boundarylessness in the movie was a part of my life for a while, because I think we just needed to feel like, no, we're inside together, And, in the movie, I think that the progression of the movie, this kind of downward, kind of doubling down feeling until it gets worse and worse and then kind of pops open, only to kind of find a new stability afterwards. I mean, I think that's what life is that sometimes you have to move through these big discomforts to like actually accept what the new normal is.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question? You, sir.
Hi. I was wondering, since you have your own grown-up kids that are grown up now, was your relationship in the movie with the kids any similar to the way your relationship is with yours?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I don't have that kind of relationship with my son at all. But, it's really hard to reveal things about yourself that are that personal. But I have a lot of complex relationships I had complex relationships with my father. I analyze a lot. I've done a lot of therapy, so I really understand how people misbehave and behave in general. So I have a vast amount of personal experiences with me and my children, and with my parents and my sisters and my friends, all of them. So I love studying human behavior. And so I have so much material to draw from. It's not just about my children.
Your one daughter's an incredible actress, though. She's had a great past few years.
Yeah. Well, they both are. But Margaret got the leftovers in the 12th grade. I mean, that's that was amazing. So yeah, she had a really good start. nice start. Yeah, and she's doing really well. Other things. So. Yeah.
Next question.
Andie, congratulations on your prolific career. Very well done.
Thank you.
Does someone in your position, can you script out your career not in terms of projects, but in terms of directions you want to go?
In my 30s, I could. In my 30s, I turned down a lot. I could have worked a lot more in my 30s. I could have worked nonstop in my 30s, but I had children, and I chose to make sure that I didn't sacrifice being a mother, because that was also a huge part of my life. And then, you turn 40. It's what they say. All the interviewers ask me, how does it feel to turn 40 and know you're not going to work anymore? And Hollywood doesn't know what to do with women after they turn 40. It's really sad. And you young people, I know you're shaking your head, and you're right. You guys are going to live a different experience. It's not going to be like that for you. I know you're amazed by it and you don't understand it because your parents raised you differently, but we're prehistoric. What we have gone through it is crazy. And by the time you're 40, you probably are going to be treated equally, but we were not. I mean, the way we've been treated is atrocious. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go off on that one.
No, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah,
please
go off.
But they don't ask men that question, and we haven't even been able to complain about it because they didn't want it. That we were made fun of if we complained. We were called whiners if we complained, and I was afraid to even complain because I just wanted to work. So I kept my mouth shut because I wanted the men in Hollywood who were in control to still want me. So I never complained until this year. Have I really felt like I'm allowed to say the truth? because I just wanted to work. So I kept my mouth shut.
It's so crazy to me that it was that way, or maybe is even still that way in some capacity, because the better stories are people who are a little bit older. The people who are over 35, women and men, have better stories to tell.
Well, we're interested. I think we're
Yeah.
we're much more complex.
Yeah.
A lot of times much more messed up.
Better
too.
more
you know?
history.
More history and just a bigger range because we have an understanding of life. We really understand life.
There's greater drama in seeing somebody who thinks that they understand life more so than other people because of their age actually be thrown into something that they don't understand and have to deal with. It's a much deeper conflict than a 22-year-old.
Well, that's true too. That's true too.
I think that's a good point. I think, you know, the scene in the movie that's the most moving to me is the scene where Andie's character has sex for the second time after her husband has died, and she's in a hotel and she can't sleep, and so she takes a bath, but that doesn't work, and so she ends up wandering this hotel, and she ends up in the middle of this high school dance. It's all there's no lines in it. It's just, you know, Andie and the camera kind of following her through this space, and I still get very moved by that sequence, and you know that my being moved is directly related to the maturity of the woman. If the woman is 25 or 30, you can't get that kind of same breadth of feeling of someone kind of. It really feels like she kind of wanders into this like memory of life or something, or of adolescence. I think it's beautiful.
I think we have time for one more. What do we got?
Hi. I was wondering, did you feel like some sort of a connection with your character when you were first reading the script, and then what did you feel after the film was done?
I would say I understood her. I was surprised when I saw my face and the depth of it's not pain or sorrow. I don't even know what you call that. Misery? I don't know. That expression on my face, what was it? What do you call that?
I liked when you were talking to NPR earlier, they said despair.
Despair. I've never, I know how it feels. I know what despair feels like. I've had that depth of despair. Plus, I have a little depression too, so I know what that feels like. But I've never seen myself. Because you don't look at yourself in the mirror when you're feeling that, You're usually just sitting alone somewhere or walking through the woods and you're feeling it. I've never seen myself. And it was very surprising to see what it looked like, And I have to say I had empathy for myself. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I understood this character very well, and I learned a lot from playing this role. It was great. I can't tell you. I mean, I know that I don't care if I'm naked on screen anymore. That I know as well, too. I have a hard time being naked in the room, like with the DP and the cameraman. I just feel slightly humiliated, but seeing it on the screen really didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was kind of surprised by that, too, because I thought I'd be embarrassed, but I have no attachment to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
I could care less. I don't care what anybody says about it. I don't care what anybody feels about it. And it was very necessary as well. I thought it was, just a huge part of the movie.
I think, if you don't mind me just saying one quick sentence on the back end of that, because I think it connects to your earlier question, which is, the nude scene is getting a lot of attention in the press because it's like this easy hook.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, it was all
no,
over.
but
I was
but
so
I want to say
embarrassed
something. But
during Tribeca that it's like, oh my God.
People are talking about that scene as if that's the risk. That's not the risk. The risk is what she's talking about in terms of being seen in a way that she's not accustomed to. That the movie challenged her to be present in a way that would be scary for anyone, let alone someone who's doing something. Someone with a following who's doing something that following isn't, kind of accustomed to seeing. So I think that the performance is very brave, and that has kind of not much to do with the nudity in it.
Yeah, it was really nothing after all.
The nudity hook still feels like kind of an antiquated like you were saying, it feels like a piece of the past generation of like, we can hook a movie because of this.
I think people are always trying to hook a movie, but to tell you the truth, I just want people to go see the movie. So if that makes them go see it.
Totally.
That's why I kept saying, I was like, I'll just talk about Chris's love scenes, because his love scenes are pretty sexy. They are a dream. I was like, I'll just whore them out.
For anybody out there, you
get people to
a little bit of Chris O'Dowd's ass in this movie.
But
Really
it
like
really
death
hot scenes. You really
and
like
sex.
you like death and sex.
Do we have a movie for you? Yeah.
It's true, you do. You have a really beautiful, wonderful film, incredible performances, really beautiful direction. Congratulations. Love After Love opens this weekend, right?
Right today. Go see
Today.
it.
Oh,
Tell
today
your
is
friends.
Friday. This
Yeah.
is this weekend right now.
Yeah.
Everybody go see it in the theater. Look at it projected. That's the way it should be seen. It's
It'll
really
be in
beautiful.
LA next week, and then it'll be around the country the following weeks.
Perfect. Thanks. It's more detailed than me. Thank you so much. Everybody give them Russell and Andie a round of applause from Love After Love.